Please consider supporting Black Women United YEG for the protection and advancement of black women and girls in Alberta. You can learn more about them at bwunited.ca. They are always looking for donations and volunteers. So please, again, support Black Women United YEG for the protection and advancement of black women and girls in Alberta. Again, that website is bwunited.ca. This is Dmitry Samarov from Chicago, Illinois, and I love listening to Vish Khanna's Creative Control because whether he's talking to a favorite musician or actor of mine or someone I've never heard of, it's as if he's introducing me to a new friend. And the way things are going, couldn't you use a new friend? Listen now.
To make your flexible monthly donation to Creative Control, please visit patreon.com/creativecontrol today.
Brandon Miguel Valdivia is a multi-talented music producer, percussionist, composer, and multi-instrumentalist who is currently based in London, Ontario. Originally from Chatham, Ontario, which is about an hour east of Detroit, Valdivia is renowned for his work as a drummer in bands like Not the Wind, Not the Flag, Picastro, and the Cosmic Range, among others, and his other contributions to improvised and jazz communities in southern Ontario. He also collaborates closely with his life partner, Lido Pimienta, and explores music's possibilities on his own, working under the name Masaya. On September 24th, 2021, Telephone Explosion Records issued Mascaras, the latest Masaya album, and Valdivia has brought its sounds to select cities around the world. He is due to appear in Edmonton, Alberta for the 2022 Purple City Music Festival, where he'll close out its opening night at the Metro on August 25th. Brandon and I caught up for a nice chat about moving to London, Ontario from Toronto, and our shared history in the Kitchener-Waterloo region, how the Guelph Jazz Festival changed our lives, drumming, shop talk, the hardships of his people in Nicaragua, being cognizant of true diversity in music scenes, and cultural elevation versus cultural exploitation, mindfulness in music, new works by him and Lido Pimienta, other future plans, and more. A part of the Entertainment One network with the support of listeners like you who follow and subscribe to this podcast and spread the word about it and make flexible monthly donations at patreon.com/creativecontrol with additional support from Blackbird Music, a well-stocked record store with locations in Edmonton and Calgary, Alberta, and friendly staff who will happily help you source special orders for hard-to-find titles like Mascaras by Masaya. Maybe you want that. Go to blackbird.ca and they will help you figure things out. Plus, in-kind support from Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, respectively, and Granddad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario. This is episode 710 of Creative Control, featuring the lovely and talented Brandon Valdivia, with your host, me, Vish Khanna.
La mayor validez, ya que en este momento pues también nosotros sabemos que se está separando los opresores y los oprimidos. En todo momento ha habido, hasta ahora pues, ha habido esa tiranía. Y no es que nosotros vamos a esperar pues unos 2000...
Hi Brandon, how you doing?
Hey Vish, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm well. It's nice to see you. We can actually see each other using the magic of the internet.
You know what? I was just thinking that. I'm like, I way prefer this way than just to be talking on a phone, looking at a wall.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
This is
I'm
nice.
the same way. Where in the world are you today?
Well, London, Ontario, Canada.
London, Ontario, Canada. I was not
Yeah.
expecting that answer. You know what I was expecting was Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Toronto.
What brings you to London?
Well, we moved out here.
Oh,
So so we've been living out here for almost a year now. So yeah, but we haven't. I mean, we've been traveling a lot. So it's been we've been here less than half the time. I feel like.
okay.
So yeah, Toronto definitely is still when we go there a bunch, and it's still oh, this is home for sure. You know.
Yeah. Are you? How long were you living in Toronto there yourself?
Ooh, 15 years,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
And before that, where were you living?
I was living in Waterloo, so because I went to Laurier.
Oh, okay, cool. Right.
So I was there for 4 years. I lived there for 4 years.
Close to my old stomping grounds in Cambridge, Ontario. where I
Yeah,
was
that's why
from.
we have. Oh, Cambridge. Okay, because I know we had some friends more from the. I thought it was the Guelph scene.
Guelph, so for what it's worth, KW, Kitchener-Waterloo, rather, for people who don't know what KW means. They're two cities. They're connected. You call it Kitchener-Waterloo, but when you're in Waterloo, you say you're in Waterloo. I don't know why is it Kitchener-Waterloo? I don't know. Anyway, we call it the KW area.
KW.
And they had all the great record stores and the great concert venues. Cambridge didn't have those things. So as soon as my friends and I came of age, we were heading to Waterloo and Kitchener. Encore Records in Kitchener was formative for me. I got all my
Shout out
records there.
Encore.
Do you know that one?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Same. Life-changing albums from there.
Yeah, and the Orange Monkey as well in Waterloo. I can't forget them.
Same.
So,
Of course.
I'd forgotten that was a thing you did for. What were you doing in school at Laurier, if I may ask?
I studied music. The music program there is mostly classical, so I studied classical music, but then that's what I was doing there in composition and percussion. Yeah.
Okay, well that makes sense given what you do. I didn't realize you'd studied.
Yeah, they call it legit, whatever, legit.
You got legit trained on how to do stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I try to forget all of it. So,
but I like those stories when I hear music by people like yourself who are adventurous, if you will, and are very open-minded and open-ended in their approach. I always I romanticize the foundational aspect of your practice, because I didn't have any formal training, and it shows. I just scrappily play. We all just learned how to play together. And I always thought my music teachers were the drummers I saw. I still have a sense memory of a guy in Guelph. He's from Rockwood. His name's Kobe Dowdell. And my band played a show with him when I was in my teens. Just watching him play changed how I played overnight, or hearing certain records. So I feel like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm sure you have this too, where you saw someone or you heard a record and that altered how you played. Is that fair?
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Many times. It happened many times. Yeah. Absolutely. And concerts in Guelph too, concerts in Waterloo, especially around that time, you're 18 to 22. I was just trying to get out of my hometown Chatham. So I wanted to have my mind blown, that's why I got out of there. Cause I was just I need to learn things. I just need to be inspired. Cause Chatham, it was cool and awesome in some ways, but I really felt the lack of, different things I was searching for that I kind of came into touch with at the end of high school. Mm-hmm. Kid A came out then, and Vespertine, and those types of Kid A really, I was wow. And starting to listen to jazz, free jazz. Yeah. I was I need to find some stuff. So I was getting into that, and Chatham had nothing like that. So Waterloo did, and Guelph, obviously. So tons of great stuff in Guelph, especially at the Guelph Jazz Festival for me. Yeah. Huge. Yeah.
Nothing. I can't think of too many things that have altered my life more than that Guelph Jazz Festival. I'll tell you that.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Just absolutely. I have sense memories of being in rooms, because sometimes they were full and packed and sometimes they weren't, but whatever was going on, whatever the crowd thing was, the music was just so overwhelming. And oh my God, I saw John Zorn play in Guelph. Come on. Well, what the heck? Tortoise played in Guelph.
I saw that show. That show was Tortoise and Art Ensemble of Chicago. That was one of my favorite shows that I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. And the X, oh my God, sorry. There's so many. I don't want to. William Parker and Hami Drake and oh my God, there's so many.
We are so blessed to be from that scene and having people like Ajay and that whole team, Scott and Karen and all the people that have booked Jesse Stewart.
Archie Shepp played. It's just Archie. Man. Anyway, I love that. Rob Mazurek.
so
Rob
many.
Mazurek would come every year almost. Like, I mean, come on. I just.
Hamid Drake every single year. Like, I learned so much from Hamid just sitting there watching him and then talking to him a little
Yeah.
bit. Like, for me, it's just so, changed everything.
Yeah.
Like,
I
Crazy.
So where I'm coming from, though, or where I was coming from, is I appreciate that watching and experiencing and listening to stuff helps, but I also love the notion of someone being trained on an instrument and spending time, but then figuring out that's not it. Those are just parameters that will get you going and give you a knowledge of your thing, the instrument, whatever it is. But then you can just do whatever you want. That's kind of where, if you get to the Guelph Jazz Festival and you see people playing conventional instruments, if you will, and doing mind-blowing things, but you, in your practice, would know the mechanics of it better than me. I just would, as a layman, I see someone, what are they doing to that saxophone? What's going on? What are they? How are they manipulating those drums? But I feel like, is that fair? You kind of have the keys more than I do to how that stuff is happening because you know the theory.
well, then there's some familiarity, like I've seen many times, and also like, have some studied with different teachers that do expanded techniques, especially like Jesse Stewart was a
Yes.
big one, so he kind of taught me a lot. And, he's still an amazing percussionist, composer, artist, he's incredible. So seeing like people like that and explain them to me, and I'd go to see shows mostly at Guelph, and, like definitely would be studying basically watching the drummer and just see, but they're putting chains on their drums, or they're put like Roger Turner, or like they're putting like different bells, they're doing all this kind of stuff. Definitely like, and different types of techniques as well. Like they call them extended techniques, which I think is kind of not a great term, because they should all just be techniques. It doesn't mean that they're lesser than normal techniques, so you can create beautiful music like Chris Corsano. If he's doing a lot of beautiful extended techniques mixing with electronics, and it's just, I've learned so much just watching. I think just learning about every concert, everything that you see, you can learn something from, if you take that attitude,
Yeah, and absolutely. And learning about prepared instrumentation from a festival like that, just like people messing with things.
We're doing it often.
Yeah. I will say Jesse Stewart is a friend and a hero of mine, and you're absolutely right.
I love it.
I've seen him do remarkable things with remarkable instruments, but also making instruments, I think, almost out of nothing.
Yeah.
That's not even an instrument, and you've turned it into one. Like the limitless imagination that is on display at that festival, and in those practices. I will tell you though, like just going back to what I was saying about feeling like I wish I had more of a foundation, I still, with some embarrassment, think of the time I asked Jesse to come by because I could not figure out how to get the drum sounds I wanted, tuning wise. I've always been self-conscious about tuning. Yeah, I remember bringing them to in London, Ontario. I had a recording session with Andy McGuffin, and I brought the drums, and he's like, yeah, you're going to need new heads here, buddy. Like, this is not going to work. I was like, oh, right, yes. So we went to the music. Anyway, Jesse came over, and he looked at me puzzled. He's like, well, I understand what you're saying, but basically, if you can make them sound the way you want them to sound, that's it. It doesn't really exactly matter. Like, you understand that this is the rack tom and this is the floor tom, and they're going to have different sounds, but there's no secret. And I was like, oh, really? I thought there was. Like, I thought I hadn't cracked the code. Do you know where I'm coming from?
Absolutely. Some people, there's definitely schools of thought where it's like there are very specific ways that these drums need to sound, and there is the best sounding drum and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, like for me, it's the same way. It's kind of like I do know how to tune or whatever, but I don't think I'm a great tuner. I just know the tendencies of the drum head. Oh, this sounds like it's a little bit tighter than the other header. They definitely sound loose. Like, oh my God, they sound like bleh. But some people love that. For me, I just don't like a bleh. Like floor tom, like people are like bleh. And I'm like, no, I want to tone,
That's where I'm at too.
That's how I tune them. So yeah, so definitely, but definitely, yeah, people are like, oh, this is, and I don't get self-conscious, but I'm like, oh, like I don't feel like I know how to
You
tune
don't
it,
either, eh? Okay,
I
don't feel that bad.
Yeah, like, yeah, like I do my thing, but which is, a lot of experience and a lot of years of it, but it doesn't mean that I know, some people are like, this is exactly how you tune it, but it's just the sound, and when you were talking about that too, it's like a great quote that I heard from Terry Clark that I think he told me, the great drummer, great jazz drummer, he told me that like he would see like Tony Williams in the San Francisco in like the 60s, like Tony Williams, Elvin Jones, like Art Blakey on the same kit, and he'd be like, oh, it's the drummer, not the drums.
That's fair. That you see this at festivals all the time when there's backline, right?
Yeah.
It's the drummer, not the drums.
Sure.
That's a good point. Do you know Dave Clark from Toronto?
Yes. Yeah, I have this thing where, because I know two Dave Clarks, but the great drummer, Dave Clark, I mean, the other one is a great drummer too. He's a nice drummer for Jennifer Castle.
That's right, and he used to play in $100 and
$100. But we're talking about Dave Clark.
Rheostatics, Dave Clark.
Woodchoppers.
Rheostatics, Woodchoppers, Dave Clark. Yeah.
Lovely, such
absolutely
a nice person.
A dear friend of mine and a mentor as well. And I asked him these same questions because he's an amazing drummer. He told me he uses a guitar tuner. He figures out what if he likes a sound, he figures out the note or the key or whatever you want to call it, and then he emulate. If it's a D, he'll just make sure the next head will tune to that thing, and he's often right. And I thought, I hope I'm not misquoting him, or if he hears this, he's like, I never said that. But I remember it distinctly thinking, a guitar tuner, really? That's fascinating. He's like, well, if you like the sound and you want to get it each time, like that's a thing you can shoot for because it's a codified thing. And then you're at least I mean, you've got to trust your ear, but psychologically, like, no, it's in D. That's what I wanted, you know?
Absolutely. And yeah, people definitely do that. You know, the thing with the drums is that they have a limited limited area where they sound really good. So like, because I think the shells, even some companies like tune the shells to notes. Yes, so they have a specific note that they have the resonant frequency, the strongest resonant frequency at that like B flat or whatever it is. So, but yeah, some people do that. And I know even sometimes like playing with Colin too, like I won't ever tune my, like Colin Fisher with Not the Wind, Not the Flag. And I won't ever tune my drums to specific things, but we'll find like tonal ranges, and he's a great listener too. So he'll be listening to the ooh, like a drone of a drum that I do, and he'll react to that. So we have those type of, you know, melodic connections as well. So you definitely, you know, there's definitely notes in the drums. That's why I like notes in the drums. I don't like buh. Like I know there's vibes that happens, and certain people like that, but like I like a lot more tone and notes, like melodic. Oh
yeah, maybe sure. Dave was just trying to be like, you can just let's make this simple for you if you're struggling. And anyway, I didn't mean to make this completely a drum talk, shop talk about drums thing, but I just
like talking about drums. I never do.
Well, I admire your percussion. First of all, like I know you primarily as a percussionist, as a drummer, and now as a producer, a multi-instrumentalist producer, and been listening to this record of yours a lot in the house, really enjoying it. But I do want to go back to one quick thing. I know that your partner Lido has roots in London. So just to clarify that, is that why you guys are in London?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
just wanted to say, how are you liking London? For those who don't know,
I mean, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for those who don't know, London, Ontario is, what is it, a couple hours west of Toronto, roughly?
Exactly.
Yeah.
About 2 hours west of Toronto. Yeah, so close. Definitely close that we can still, you know, we definitely have a relationship with Toronto, of course, and still basically do some of the same things that we did before in Toronto in a way. But like really it's been touring. But yeah, London, like that's the thing, like we've been I don't know London that much. I mean, I'm knowing it more. One thing I know is that strikes me is the forests and the nature that luckily still is there. They're definitely, you know, expanding and quote unquote developing a lot around here. So, you know, that's definitely slowly happening, but there is a lot of like beautiful forests and trees and stuff. It's gorgeous.
It's the city itself, known as the forest city, isn't it?
I don't know. Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah. And it still exists, you know, in a way. We have a specific experience with London because we just moved here and we've been away for half the year. So, and we have a very busy, you know, external like musical activity. So like we don't need to be kind of like searching for people here, even though I do want to do that. I do want to kind of meet, you know, see if there's some cool people. I made a connection to a show that I did 2 months ago with Chuck from Slow Attack Ensemble, and he lives here as well. So, you know, I was like, great, that's to have one of these great artists, and like Adam Sturgeon and those folks live here too. So, but again, they're touring a lot, so we have a specific relationship with it. It's nice. The forests are nice. I don't like how spread out it is, and like I don't drive, so like it takes forever to get anywhere. I don't like how kind of it doesn't seem like there's much public transportation at all. Yeah. So that kind of weirds me out. I feel like that's kind of strange. So the infrastructure of the city, there's not many like nice like little places that I haven't found as far as like restaurants or anything like that. Everything's kind of like very suburban, and so, you know, I think downtown there's definitely nice places. I just don't know. I went to a nice barber the other day, so that was cool to find a good barber in London. So yeah, you know, it's cool. It's fine for now, and I definitely need to explore it more for sure.
It's weird because I saw when I was talking about having to leave Cambridge to go to see shows and whatnot, London was actually on the route because I would go to the Embassy Club and call the office. I think of it as which were cool venues, and I saw really important shows there for sure. And I think of it as a bit of a conservative city in a lot of ways. I think the main university there caters to like business students, and it has a reputation for being conservative. However, like in my memory, in the late 90s, they had the No Festival. And so you could see Thurston Moore doing like guitar freakouts and all sorts of like interesting, and like I said, I saw lots of meaningful music. I find that sometimes these like Cambridge was sort of like this too, except we would always get shut down. These conservative cities always have very interesting pockets of art and culture that's sort of reacting to what's going on. So I imagine as you explore more, you'll find that, because London I think of as also this like really amazing DIY punk rock city. So, sorry, I know I'm all over the place with my perception of it, but I just want you to know, from my own experience, like I think you'll find people there that are awesome, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I know that. I definitely know that. So, yeah, definitely.
Okay. And
I definitely, there's definitely hope in there for sure. And like, yeah, the conservative thing, I mean, it's interesting because I did look at the election, what each sort of like district or ward voted in, like, because I was curious about how conservative, because PPC seemed to be like quote unquote PPC party seemed to be pretty strong here, but they were very, very, very visual or very like loud as far as like waving flags and stuff like that. But didn't seem like they got many votes, and like conservatives, it kind of was pretty heavily mixed between conservatives and liberals with a fair amount of an NDP, but definitely, at least in our area, was less conservative than I expected as far as talking about like voting and all that kind of thing.
That's great to hear. I mean, I don't mean to take us down a morbid road, but London was in the news for a horrible, horrible tragedy in the last few years.
And that's in our neighborhood.
Oh my God.
Like that was like, yeah, that's like down the street. So like definitely, you know, yeah, but that was before we moved here, you know, but it's definitely around. Like there was a visual, like whatever it was, like I think 3 months ago, and Lucien was my stepson, he was taking piano lessons around there, and he saw like that visual happening, so he went down there, and it was like, oh, like our London family, and I was like, no, it shouldn't, like the buttons should be like, you know, like it's not, oh, I'm against Islamophobia. It's like, no, I'm against white supremacy, you know, like, yeah, but they don't, you know, it's horrible.
Just for brief context for those not following along, there was a horrible murder. A kid, I want to say, in a truck ran down a family who visually appeared as Muslim to him based on their clothing. And yeah, it's just awful. And that prompted a lot of talk about London and what's going on in this city. Why is this happening?
Yeah.
But this happens in every city. And
absolutely.
It can happen everywhere because we do have a white supremacy problem. And
which is like growing, seems like.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know if this is a poor segue or not. There is despite the primarily instrumental nature of this new record, there is a political undercurrent, I want to say, but I feel like at times it's very overt. Can you talk a little bit about where this record came from in terms of the type of music you normally make, and maybe what I'm getting at in terms of just picking up on something going on in I don't want to say lyrically, but you know what I mean, in terms of what's being conveyed by samples and field recordings. Am I on the right track? Can you talk about where this came from?
Yeah, absolutely. I would try to be definitely overt in some ways about political stance, or it's hard. I don't like using political because I just feel like political is part of like politics is the same system, you know, that. So I like to be more, it's about human relations or something like that. But politics is a way. So definitely wanted to be overt in some ways. And around the time I was making the album, like there was all this like intense protests in Nicaragua, like where I have family there. And so I definitely keep up to touch with as much as I can with like what's going on there. But it was to the point where it was like it had blown up. Like there was thousands of people on the streets. The government was like, suppressing things, like killing people on the streets. Like it was almost an insurrection. Like it was like verging on insurrection. You know, like it was like almost there. And you know, this guy's pretty heavy-handed. Like people call him a dictator.
This is Daniel Ortega.
Daniel Ortega, and his wife Rosario Murillo. Mm-hmm. And those two, they basically the family runs Nicaragua like it used to before the revolution happened, because there was a revolution, like a socialist-led revolution in the late 70s where they overthrow a U.S.-backed dictator. So this is now this like socialist dictator, is that he kind of turned to a dictator now, and it's more like a family thing. It's not socialism. He just calls it that because it makes him seem like he's anti-American and part of like the left of like Latin America and like the lineage of Che and Fidel and stuff like that. And it's BS. I think at one point it wasn't necessarily, but he kind of seems like he's always been kind of just kind of a piece of shit. I don't know if I can swear.
You can swear all you want. It's
okay.
You don't have to, but if you want to, emphasis. What do I sound like a dad all of a sudden? You can swear for emphasis.
No, I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know how.
No, of course. I
normally just talk pretty freely and hope people edit out my swear words. But basically, so he didn't seem like he was ever really on the right track. But so that's why the kind of more overtly sort of political things. But honestly, I've been doing Masaya, this project, for 10 years now. As low key as sometimes it is, sometimes it's not low key. I play shows. I'll release some things with like independent. Like Toronto labels, like Friends, like, so I definitely have, it's always been sort of political in nature and overtly political, because it's what some people ask me, and they talk to me, oh, how was the Toronto scene? How's the Toronto scene? Because it was honestly, it was a reaction to what mostly of my peers at the time were in experimental music. It seemed to me like in Toronto, at least, and rightly or wrongly, I know there was always an element of politics to things, but at that time it was reaction to the kind of apoliticalness I felt like from the experimental scene in Toronto and around Ontario, like, and stuff I'd seen in Montreal. And so I felt like things more needed to be said. So that's why I was like, I'm just going to literally speak things and like say things. And I was definitely influenced by like dance hall, like kind of like sing jays, like of the early 90s and stuff like that. So like that kind of style. So I knew I didn't have to like sing. I could just kind of sing 3 notes or 4 notes. And also different folk musics is kind of like that around the world, and traditional musics where it's like what I'm inspired by, more simplistic, kind of more chanting rather than, so that's, so it's always been, I've always wanted to have politics, and I don't know, it's always been a response to that, but recently, it's been a little bit more less overt. But that was why there's the overt political kind of sentiment in that record. But then mixed with like the kind of like, I wanted to kind of be very meditative and very contemplative as well. So I wanted to have this kind of peacefulness about meditation about it, but at the same time have this kind of urgency, because I was really feeling that as well, like coming from deep down, like kind of a need to also spread the word about that, because Nicaragua's not, it's a small country geographically, politically, population wise, so it's often, I don't know, even I'm like I don't know, half Nicaraguan or whatever, like, to talk about people like that, but like I have Nicaraguan ancestry and my family's there, so I felt like I need to represent in some way. I feel like it because I do get people being like, thank you for representing Nicaragua, thank you for representing like Central America, like in that way, and I'm like, I really take it strongly. I never like say I'm Central American because I don't have to deal with the stuff that those people have to deal with. But like in solidarity, I definitely feel like I can represent that as much as I can. And there is like a weird sense of responsibility as far as that now. Like, it feels like, okay, well, I don't know. This feels like there's a thing, especially when it's politics and like like some family was in jail and stuff like that. It was just like such dictator, power.
Your actual family members were jailed for protesting. Is that correct?
Yeah, I had a cousin. Yeah, cousins. Sort of like he's my cousin. We call him cousins. But he's like a cousin of a cousin, like my cousin's kid, basically, step cousin, whatever that would be.
Like third or second cousin or whatever it is. Yeah, sure. Second cousin. Yeah, and definitely he was like he's a young guy and just was out in the streets. And it's interesting because his dad, my cousin's husband. His dad was a big Sandinista, which was the left wing group that was the government, and so he was actually he founded the police in like the Sandinista police in that city, Esteli. So like, the founding of the Sandinista police in that city 2 generations later is going to jail, protesting that same
like Sandinista group, you know. So there's this irony or this power you can see. Wow, like, you know, this family that was strong, three generations of Sandinistas, strong Sandinistas, is now being in jail by protesting against that own Sandinista government. So
it is interesting how often, and
you know,
it's different in every situation, but it's fascinating how a movement towards change often creates these monsters. You cited Fidel. We've talked about Ortega. Like, you know, arguably that's what's going on in countries like ours and countries like the United States. Like, there's just this deep-seated frustration. I'm not, by the way, I mean, some of these examples, the change was absolutely necessary because there were whole hog dictatorships, and but when the coups happened or when the insurrections happened, it created this vacuum, and somehow the same people who are calling for revolution for the people, which again is the rhetoric we're hearing in Western countries now. Like, we're doing like populism, right? But then they become the monsters, and you learn that they are really just jealous of the power, I guess, in a deep-seated way. Sorry, we're not political experts. I really appreciate your explanation of what's going on in your home country, because I'm not deeply knowledgeable about that, and I'm sure some of my listeners would agree. Like, it's just, there's so many. It's a tiny
place, yeah, you know, and yeah, it's not my home country, but I can represent.
Were you born there?
No, I was born
in and raised in Chatham.
In Chatham, Ontario.
Okay.
Yeah,
but you have roots there.
Yeah. My dad's from there. My family's still there. I've been there. You know, my whole we were surrounded by my mom's family, and then, but to a larger extent, like my Nicaraguan family, they're always around and going crazy and stuff.
It's a tricky thing. My parents are from India. I was born here. India is not my home country, but at the same time,
there we go.
At the same time, it's my roots. Like, I'm almost, like, I guess, like, it is. Did you have sorry, I don't want to lose, you said a bunch of things in that last thing, so I'm going to try to focus on those first. What I wanted to get to was your upbringing. Sorry, were your parents immigrants from Nicaragua?
My mom's Canadian,
okay.
My dad's Nicaraguan.
So that, I just don't want to lose that culture clash thing, because I can relate to it, and I've talked about it with other people on this show, and I don't want to lose that. But I want to get into what we were talking about earlier, the definition of politics. And you were talking about how the experimental music scene in Toronto was apolitical. When it comes to conventional understandings of what being political means in music or art, I do want to ask you about that, because I think there's a school of thought in the arts that the expression itself can be a political or socio-cultural expression, or to be outspoken is to express yourself with your art on some level. Those are statements. I do feel like when I'm at the Guelph Jazz Festival or at other unconventional music gatherings, there is this sort of underlying sense that it's a political act. It is a commentary on convention and norms. The very nature of, like, doing something that doesn't have consistency or is in its inherently unsettling, that's a political act. I just want to ask you about that in your practice, because to differentiate between overt political commentary or contextualizing music like this record as being political, when if you were to just absorb it with no contextual language around it, it would be, I would think, arguably, it would be difficult to pick up on some of the themes you've been talking about. It would be less concrete anyway. You, through doing press and through biographical information, have the luxury, I suppose, or rather the choice, I should say, of contextualizing it in this way and doing interviews and all that sort of thing. Anyway, sorry, I'm swimming around here. My point here is, can music, particularly in the realms you've been in Toronto, in its very nature, or art or creativity, do you feel like that in itself is a political act?
I mean, yeah, no, those are great analyses and kind of observations. Definitely think that, because I'm absolutely aware of that, because I also lived in those and worked in those scenes, in the U.S. with Colin a lot, in kind of all the Northeast U.S. We toured like 5-6 times, got to see amazing, all the different kind of like experimental scenes and the kind of like the other side of kind of mainstream, the reaction against it too. Absolutely think that those are political. There was times where I also felt like part of the machine though. That's the thing. What's weird because like they're like, and you know, I know it's way more complicated. It's hard for me. It's hard to talk about this stuff. That's not hard to talk about it, but I also know that any statements can be like wrong or just ignorant, you know, so. But I just kind of speak from experience or just like my own perspective or whatever. And it felt like there was one show we did in Baltimore where these like, yeah, we were playing and it was, you know, free jazz shows and, you know, say mostly like white kids or whatever, not kids, but 20 something. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Baltimore is really like, yeah, super divided. You know, it seems like there's like black neighborhood, white neighborhood, black, you know, of course there's different, you know, they like, there's definitely white people in the, you know, like they definitely like hang out together and stuff like that. And obviously society, the way that money works there, but there is a big kind of sense of that. And so, yeah, this like black woman came in, she's like, this is my neighborhood. And, you know, like I was like, right before we played, you know, and I'm like, oh man, gentrification, like, is this gentrification? Like, are we part of this? You know? So definitely have had those kind of experiences before where we're also like, oh, we're in the, you know, anyways, where that's probably more US, like as far as those distinct kind of cultural barriers, you know, where you can really see it, but it happens here. But I do think that I do think that, but I also think there's because music itself can also be a weapon against working class people and against, you know, it can be like it has these political kind of like where depends on where they're coming from, you know what I mean? So it can be used as sort of weapons of oppression in a way too, right? Like as far as like, oh, this is only for like rich people or only educated rich people understand this kind of music. So, you know, I definitely think about that because I also think about like the audience for a lot of experimental music, and I was like, oh, like I feel like seems like most people here, the kind of connecting kind of fabric, it seems like a lot of it is like art school. You know, it felt like that at that time, and so like, you know, like our university, of course not everybody was, but there seemed like so I kind of felt like, oh, maybe there's this sort of class that comes to these shows like in Toronto and stuff, and so I was like, maybe that, you know, that is also because I started thinking about diversity, you know, and about like, and not about just diversity for it in and of itself, but more about community. I'm like, well, Toronto is like, you know, like half the people from here are not from Toronto, and mostly in the scenes that I play in, it seems like most of these kids are like, you know, like from Toronto, like whatever, they're like Canadian or like, you know, not like they're not immigrants or they're not, you know, basically people of color, like different like races, different ethnicities. Like, you know, obviously at that time too, we were seeing a lot less women. So it felt like also that too. I was like, oh, this is kind of even in the US, we go to the US and it'd be like all like mostly like vast majority like white people, you know, and I'm like, oh man, like where's like the Latinos? Like where's like, where, you know, like well, that's I always think of the US. I'm like, oh, the beautiful, you know, like Latino culture, like the black culture there, like the amazing, you know, like richness of those cultures and stuff. And so I felt like that, and I saw that lack, so like that kind of sometimes, you know, I don't know, that's just kind of a meditation on. So I definitely felt like it wasn't necessarily political because I feel like, and I just was reading Sun Ra's book. And we've been on tour. I've been luckily had time to read like a bunch of beautiful, amazing things.
Which book is it?
The Space is a Place.
The biography.
The biography. Yeah.
I have it up in my room. It was recommended to me by Rob Mazurek, and I bought it based on Rob's recommendation. But I have had it a while. Sorry, I've heard it's great.
Beautiful. Yeah, makes you think about a lot of things. But yeah, it's beautiful. Same thing. I mean, I think maybe Colin Fisher gave it to me. I don't know. Somebody gave it to me like 10 years ago. It was sitting on my shelf, and I finally read it. And
Rob was on the show. The last time Rob was on the show, which might have been 2 years ago, he mentioned it, and then I was like, okay, I'll buy it, and then I just haven't. Sorry, I have to read.
It's an amazing book.
The podcast becomes like school for me, and I have to read I have to read books to prepare for interviews, and then that pushes all my leisure reading. Sorry, that's just a little aside.
Well, I definitely appreciate that research for sure. You know, like or not research, but people. I don't know, reading. You know, I think we appreciate that. You know, as people who get interviews for sure. So yeah,
I appreciate the conflict within you as you're talking about the fact that you were part of a community that supported you, but it made you also ponder that community in terms of its makeup, demographic makeup. Here's a big question that I've been wrestling with, or I think a lot of us have been. I think there's been an evolution in notions of elevation and appropriation. So we have seen, here's an example, and it's kind of out of the blue. Paul Simon. Paul Simon in the 80s released 2 records. He made Graceland and Rhythm of the Saints. And what he did was he went to Africa and he employed musicians and singers like Ladysmith Black Mambazo. And that exposed those musicians and those cultural forms to an audience that would otherwise not know about them. I think it's probably fair to say that Ladysmith Black Mambazo had a huge following because of their experiences there. However, and I don't know if this occurred at the time, there's always been Paul Simon haters. Over time, that whole exercise on Paul Simon's part has been viewed as cultural appropriation and exploitation. I'm not, again, this might be out of the blue for you based on what you were just saying. This is the conflict and I grew up a Beastie Boys fan who were there, part of hip hop culture in New York from the get-go, but also saw that it was cool after being in a punk band and thought that's what we should be doing. Maybe as a joke at first or whatever, we're going to have fun. But then also arguably, and I've made this argument before, on a Beatles-like level, they made music that pervaded and influenced the culture. I hear it to this, the people of my generation are now, who grew up on Beastie Boys, are in positions where they make music for advertisers or sitcoms or cartoon shows. My kids watch Teen Titans Go, and yes, the theme is by Mixmaster Mike, who became a Beastie Boy, but throughout the program, I hear, oh, that's Beastie Boys. Like, that's what... Anyway, sorry. This is a knot that I think you're describing as well. I was part of a community that wasn't very diverse, but was also very supportive of open-minded and diverse thoughts and was welcoming to as many people as it could be. I think that's what you were saying. I don't mean to paraphrase. Yeah, but you felt absolutely conflicted about it, and it was problematic because the actual people involved in these cultural practices were few and far between. Anyway, I don't know if I have a question per se, but that notion of that evolution of our thoughts between what is actually being hip and cool and open-minded to other cultural forms and what is exploitation and what is cultural appropriation. Is that kind of where you're coming from a little bit with your conflict about what are we doing? How are we doing things?
No, not really, but there is, like, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I guess that's one of the things of it, like, you say, you know, like, say jazz and free jazz, like, you know, there's obviously like the European folks, like the whole scene over there, but like a lot of the American stuff, like the stuff that's from the Americas, this continent, like a lot of that free jazz stuff was political, you know, was like in the 60s and 70s, like, you know, Coltrane, like all that stuff's very, very extremely political, and, you know, obviously in many different kind of coming from many different places. So like, and then you ask, I think nowadays, like, I don't know, it's like the majority of people, and I don't know, I mean, I would say maybe a bunch, like if you go, you know, somewhere, I don't know if you necessarily think that it was like political intentions behind some of the music, and that's fine because, you know, of course, and anything I'm trying to say, I'm not trying to belittle people because everyone has their own experience and stuff, you know, but like, I don't know if it's necessarily political because, I mean, maybe it was the time of like civil rights, but obviously like ancestry and tradition of you know, it's coming from a long lineage of history and culture and specific cultural kind of things that happen, you know, and I believe that stuff is in the blood, that stuff is in the music, that stuff, you know, like, so yeah, I feel like I definitely wrestle with cultural appropriation for sure, and like, you know, I think about it for myself, and I think, am I doing this? You know, even
that's what I'm hearing.
Drums with like Lido, of course, like for sure. I mean, I think we should, you know, like I think we should, and I mean, but I mean, even any music, I guess that I would do, I would hopefully be wrestling with where it came from too. You know what I mean? Like
I know, you know, but it becomes if you really get mired in that, we might all just stop what we're doing, is where I'm coming from too. Like, how do you properly pay respect to this long history?
Be yourself.
What?
Just be yourself. That's to me like don't you know, like you don't, I don't know, that's to me, that's the big thing. It's just like, for as far as like not just being like, oh, what's cultural appropriation, what's not, you know, like some people it's very simple, you know, but of course, if you go back 500 years, it might not be, say there was, you know, like some sort of thing that happened between, you know, some group to another group, and then they, you know, like took over because, you know, like obviously like oppressive communities and oppressive societies have, you know, kind of always been like, it's always been like that. So as far as like that, and that's what we talk about with, I think for me, appropriation is like how one class or one society or one kind of group of people has had traditionally had like political power over top of the other person, and then just basically takes their music and there's no money that gives back or whatever, like. And I mean, artistically that's fucked up, but also financially that's fucked up, because these people are fucking chilling in their, like wherever it is. Like I think about stuff in Colombia, it's like these master musicians can't get by, and it's like how many people are. I feel like that too. I feel like I shouldn't even play music, because I feel like most of the amazing, incredible, beautiful, amazing, powerful music that is speaking from the ancestry and speaking to gods and spirits. It's like they're not necessarily all famous or like making money doing music. Like there's a lot of people that are, but there's also lots of people that aren't making more. So I'm just like, oh man, like I'm out there playing shows, like. I don't. Yeah,
I hear it. I'm hearing it in everything you're saying. Self-consciousness, conflict.
Yeah.
There's so many isms at play in what you're talking about in terms of people being relegated or left behind. It's very complicated, but I will say, if we don't overthink about it too much, like we get into these realms because we're inspired to by these same people. Like we know where it's coming from. We know this lesser-known artist. Is the reason we got into what we're doing. So I think there's hope in that. And then if you can, and we've seen it numerous times, an artist elevates or what have you, and then they begin to shout out the people that sort of helped mold them. Again, going back to the Beastie Boys thing, when I say pervasive, they would highlight, rap about, sample all their heroes, and then if you were a digger, you would go find that stuff, and in a way it was educational. And I there's very few artists on that level who would do that. I would argue Kurt Cobain for me in the 90s was just constantly wearing t-shirts by artists he loved and talking about them and making lists and making them public. That's a sort of public service he was doing, like check out the Wipers or whoever, and I was like, the Wipers, what's that? Amazing. Like, sorry, I'm just saying, I think...
that's beautiful, yeah, and that's a responsibility, paying respect to where you came from. And I think that's, as just a person, you have to do that too, so... I agree, I absolutely agree. Yeah, totally. I mean, I try to do that too,
We've talked a little bit about what you were trying to express on a sociocultural or political level with this record. Musically, what would you want to say about it? You talked about sort of it being meditative. And I think if I were to boil it down, you're talking about mindfulness generally, being mindful of what people go through, what civilizations go through, and the struggle, but also chilling out a little bit and also letting sound calm you down, I think, is maybe where you were coming from. Can you talk about the musical landscape of this work, this particular album?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like, I mean, a lot of that, the stuff from this album too. I mean, in general, my intentions are like that. But as far as having music that is meditative and music that feels good, I don't know. That's so subjective. But music that makes you, that I feel like it wants to soften you up. Like kind of like wants to soften you, kind of wants to like make you just more susceptible to energies and kind of expansions, something like that. So. But this one definitely, like, yeah, like the Mascotus record, like, I made that stuff like 3 years ago. So technologically, I was at a certain place, even like as far as my interest in electronic music. So a lot of it was just super experimental, like super experiments. And they just came out of jams. Like these compositions came out of jams. This residency that I did at Aga Khan Museum, I think it was 2019, maybe 2018, actually.
And where is that museum?
That's in Toronto, like North Toronto, like North York, I guess.
Yep.
And it's it's an amazing, beautiful museum. And so they had these pop-up events where you had to prepare like you'd have like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you'd go and you'd play for 3 hours, or like, sorry, you'd be there for 3 hours, but you'd play 3 sets of half an hour. So like 90 minutes. So I had to get, music together for that. And I was like, all right. So I kind of spent like, say the concerts the pop-up things were in October. And so I spent like August and September at late nights, just kind of jamming. Coming up with these like drones.
When you say jam,
just on my own, But yeah, so just jams on my own, like just kind of experimenting with different synths and Ableton. And at that time too, I was working on a play. So I was working on a play for my lovely friends Aluna at Aluna Theatre in Toronto. And so some of the things were explorations based on the kind of on some of the inspirations that I got from that play as well. So like one of the pieces, like what the main chord progression is like from a scene that I used in the play that I think was really short, so I wanted to expand it more and use it more and expand on it. I had it more expanded, and I took it down for the play and then built it up again. But yeah, the lovely folks at Aluna. So all those types of things were kind of happening at that same time. And also, like, one of the pieces, like, I was definitely interested in like repetition and elongated kind of repetition things. And so one of the pieces I wrote like in the mornings in Villanueva, Colombia, which is where Lido and her family live, where she spent a lot of her childhood there too. And it's a small, beautiful city in Northeast Colombia, super hot. So in the mornings, like 6 a.m, I just get up with my computer and my headphones and just kind of make stuff. And so it was just like coming from that to, that's what the one song's called, Villanueva. The album was almost going to be called Villanueva because it kind of all stemmed from this land there, you know, and just these, repetitions. So all those types of kind of concerns. And there were just technological things that I was kind of like, whoa, cool. This, like, I got this reverb plugin that goes like forever, and it's like let's use that, you know, like, so I just kind of, all this exploration. I feel like my new stuff is a lot more like picking and choosing rather than just exploring, you know, like, so, because I said it's what, three years ago, a lot of this material, so that's kind of where it was coming from.
I see.
Also, like, not a lot of live drums.
Yeah, I noticed
for a long
that.
time for a long time I had this. Yeah, there are, but they're sampled and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And there's shakers and stuff like that, but not a lot of my newer stuff is a lot more live drums, because for a long time my Masaya project was like my non-drumming project. Like, it was my flute and beats project, kind of. That's what I always thought. But nowadays it's kind of changed. And my live shows now, I'm playing actually live drums as well over top of the tracks. So
oh wow,
it's coming together. Yeah, I kind of feel like we're talking about like my composition and percussion background, and I kind of feel like that's what's happening now, is a lot of it's coming together, like my composition kind of ideas and my percussion playing is now finally kind of melding, I think. So it's kind of interesting.
Sounds very exciting.
So,
I can't wait to see it. You mentioned your live show, and as we're speaking right now, you are due to come to Edmonton, which is where I live. That's very exciting for me. You're part of the Purple City Festival, I want to say. So you're coming for that. Do you have any other tour plans at the moment? Not for Masaya. Any shows that I can, you know, I'll play, but I can't really tour. And I'm working on my new record right now. So basically, like, I'm kind of doing that. And then with Lido, we're very busy, you know. Yeah. It's a lot of shows with Lido Pimienta, like, this last few months, which has been amazing. You know, it's been incredible. But we've been very, very busy. So there's not really time to play my own shows. Like, even this show I'm doing, like, I'm playing it, and then I'm going to like Olympia like the next day. Speaking of Kurt Cobain. Yeah, Olympia, Washington. Oh, okay. Yeah. So Washington. So So, you know, I just got to fit him in there. But when Lido, this, you know, just when Lido's thing kind of chills out, I'll be looking for more shows or working on my record. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I take shows when I can. I like it a lot. I like playing shows. Okay. I would like to go on like a week tour, stuff like that. So we'll see. You know, touring's hard, but I still like I feel like that's my thing, you know. I like to tour, I like to play, you know. Yeah. You've got a family life there to consider as well. I'm sure there's lots of considerations with school is coming, September is coming, and all those sorts of things, I'm sure. Exactly. I don't know if that's a factor for you, actually. I shouldn't say that, but I'm sure it is. I'm guessing it is. Yeah. It is. Work with Lido beyond the touring? Are you guys working on new music together? She is also working on her new record too. So we'll be, and Lido's going to be on my record, and like, you know, I'm going to be doing percussion on the new one. So yeah, definitely going to be doing some stuff. Very busy. Yeah, very busy. Very busy. Yeah. It's always busy, you know, like, and especially touring a lot, especially now that shows are back, it's like full on, you know. So yeah, I'm trying to get my record done. Like, Lido's doing hers kind of after I'm done mine. So that's kind of how we timed it. And then, cause it's pretty, you know, you want to be like full-time, you know, ish schedule, you know, like I feel like you want to be just kind of really devoted to the project and for like a while, you know. So definitely it's a good spot to be in as far as creation, when you're just focusing on the material rather than, okay, now I'm doing the material, now I'm going to go cook some food and play with the baby. We're going to go to the park and then, you know, take a shower with the, you know, like just do all the kid stuff. So, which is fine, because I obviously do that too, but I do like to have time where it's like really just like specific work on music, you know. And do you actually have in a percentage, do you personally know how far along you are on your own record? Like, could you be like, I think it's 80% done, or how? Yeah, 70%. You're at you think you're it's not a science, but you would argue you're at 70%. That's what I've always told the people I'm working with on my record, that I'm like, these producers I'm working with, and
And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm 70%. I think I'm about 70%. Obviously, you figure that out when, but yeah, I know I feel pretty good about it. That's the thing. That's definitely a number of confidence, and that's all just me, like stuff that I've done by myself, you know. So
Yeah.
I feel like other voices are gonna make it even better, because the Mascotas was just me, literally, and then Lido on one song, because it was quarantine. It was like during that time, you know. So I was tracking it in between naps, you know, with the baby, you know, baby's napping, I'm tracking, you know, nighttime, baby's sleeping, I'm tracking, you know. So yeah, it was literally like that, very domestic.
You got your hands full is what I'm getting at there, and it's
definitely
quite
it's beautiful
remarkable.
though.
Yeah, no, it's good.
It's beautiful.
Life is good.
Life is good. Yeah.
If you can, for us.
yeah.
Mostly.
I was gonna say.
If people, if you want rather people to learn more about you and your work on the internet, where would you like to direct them to learn more about this record and your own pursuits?
Yeah, the Bandcamp is always good. I have like all my music on there, like my first tape, another EP, and then another digital record, and then my vinyl in there. So the Bandcamp is good, and my Bandcamp's like Masaya, Masaya, Masaya Bandcamp. So, but I think if you just kind of look up like it's 2 words, MAS, new word AYA, I think it'll pop up. You'll see a photo on there somewhere, and then also Instagram is Masaya, MASALLA, MASAYA. I do my thing on there. I don't know. That's before I like really cared about all this stuff. So I was like, oh, it just happens twice, but it's way more annoying to type it. But that's just what I did back in 2015 or whatever.
But you're active on that thing. You put,
I do.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. And Bandcamp. Yeah, I put stuff on there. There's a remix on there I did for Colin Fisher that, you know, is nowhere else. And
okay.
So there's stuff on there. But yeah, Bandcamp's the best for me. But I'm also, my recent album is all streaming on all the services too. So,
and it's out on
there's still
Explosion.
vinyl. Yeah. Amazing Telephone Explosion records. Yeah, there's some records left.
Yeah.
Too. So there's definitely vinyl. If folks want it out there, some distribution stuff. I have a handful left.
People might think this is a cliche, but I will. I often say I ordered it. I'm waiting for it. But in your case, I will order it. I haven't done that yet, and this is me on the record saying that I'm going to get your record physically. I've been listening to it digitally, and it's wonderful. So I encourage people.
It's nice. The artwork is very special by Orly Anan. Yeah. The artwork I feel like is So as far as having a piece, it's like a piece of art. You know, like there's specific pieces that she made for the record and with the music in mind, and also certain types of just like the art. It's art for sure. So it's beautiful. Orly Anan's amazing. So it's definitely nice. But I appreciate that for sure. Like, I definitely
no, it's my pleasure.
Appreciate buying it.
If we can go out on a song from this record, can you choose one for us and explain why it came to mind?
I feel like the Quiescence song, the last song.
Quiescence, yeah.
Yeah, Quiescence. I don't even know how to say it right, but it's I don't know. It's always been one of my favorites, but I do like a lot of the records. So I'm happy about that. That I can be like, oh no, I like this song. No, I like this song. But let's do that one because that's what the first came to mind. It's the last song. It's always been one of my favorites. It's one of my first like kind of like these. I don't know, this kind of like beauty. It's very much now. I know it's kind of this kind of post Alice Coltrane. That's kind of where I'm coming from. This kind of like gorgeous, kind of like floaty kind of vibe. This kind of, it has this pulsating kind of like rhythm, this drone that's going on. I like the texture of it, and that's kind of where I'm going in my newer stuff. It's in that kind of direction, but a lot more analog, a lot more just like real instruments rather than sort of synths and stuff. So yeah, it's I like
that the last song on your most recent record is what is your guide to your next recording. Does that make sense? It's almost like a path. It's kind of it does make sense. It does make sense. But then I go back to kind of my old the Masaya sound for me, which is like just basic pure drums and then like flutes, and that's it. Just like two things, like drums, flutes. Yeah.
That's like, I think that's like my like something that which not my sound, but I have certain types of rhythms that I do in that sound world that I'm like, oh, this is really something that I've been doing, you know. Which for me it's kind of like this like dance hall cumbia thing with flutes. That's so you know, to betray my sources, you know, to really obviously.
Well, you know what?
You can tell
let's let people hear it, and they can kind of figure these things
Absolutely.
out. What do you think?
Definitely. Please.
Okay, new music by Masaya. Brandon, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. I hope you enjoyed this chat, and I hope we speak again. And best of luck in the future.
I definitely did. Thank you. It's a pleasure to share these talks with you for sure. So this conversation. So thanks, and thanks for having me on here for sure. Thanks, Vish.
Oh, thanks so much to Brandon Valdivia, aka Masaya, for appearing on this, the 710th episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Entertainment One podcast network and is available just about wherever you get your podcasts. If you can't find an episode that you've heard about, you're looking for it, you don't know where it is, you looked under the couch, you looked under the phone, you looked in the computer, where the heck is it? Or if you want to learn more about me and sign up for my monthly newsletter, everything you need to find is pretty much at vishkhanna.com. In life, not just about me, just everything you would want in life, vishkhanna.com. Also, you can like Creative Control on Facebook, follow the show on Twitter at Vish Creative, or follow me directly on Twitter and on Instagram at vishkhanna. You can also visit patreon.com/Creative Control to make a flexible monthly donation to sustain this podcast. That is the primary source of revenue for all of the work I do on this show. And these days there are some perks. $6 or more a month grants you access to exclusive content, both derived from fresh interviews. Some of it is derived from my archives. You also get to hear the newest episode of the show first. So the new episodes go up on the Patreon there at the $6 or more level. And also, there's still a few Creative Control t-shirts, so if you'd like one, just message me on Patreon, and I'll get you ones while supplies last. Also, been asking people for testimonials on the Patreon. Those of you who listen to the show regularly know, top of the show, there's usually a voice from one of the listeners who wants to say who they are, where they're from, why they like the show, why they support the show, and then they send me those recordings. I gussy them up in the editing stuff, and then I put them up at the front, and I could use more of those. So if you support the show on Patreon, feel free to send a testimonial, and I posted something on the Patreon page about this. Anyway, $6 or more is great. Anything less is fine. You can change whatever you make it. If you want to increase it or decrease it, whatever. Patreon.com/Creative Control. Thanks again to the fine Alberta record retailer Blackbird Music, which you can learn more about at blackbird.ca. Also want to thank Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario for their in-kind support for this show. As always, thanks to my dear friend in Toronto, Jim Guthrie, for lending me some music. You can learn more about Jim at jimguthrie.org. And finally, thank you for listening to this episode with Masaya, Brandon, Valdivia. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you'll consider subscribing to this podcast or following it and telling your friends all about it. And listen to Masaya and all sorts of things like that. That's all I got. I will talk to you very soon. Thanks for being you. Be well. Be good. Bye for now.